Greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. I'm Steve Deace. Brought to you by our friends over at Birch Gold. You know, in these crazy times, there is peace of mind and security. Where can you find that kind of security? Well, you're not financially secure if you've got all your eggs in one basket. Gold and silver are an excellent way to diversify your savings as a hedge against inflation, government debasement schemes. What are those, Steve? Exactly what they're doing to your country right now. That's what those are. They're a physical asset that is in high demand globally, from the wealthy to the banks. No reason why you can't take advantage of it as well. And you can through our friends at Birch Gold Group. You can own physical gold and silver, and even in a tax-sheltered retirement account. That's right, you can diversify an old IRA or 401k for no money out of pocket into an IRA in gold and silver. That's one thing you can do to secure your prosperity and your family's future savings. So text Steve to 989898 and receive a free, no-obligation info kit. Learn the role precious metals plays in your overall savings and financial strategy. Again, text Steve to 989898. Text Steve to 989898. Also want to let you know that here at The Blaze, tomorrow night here on Blaze TV, something you won't want to miss. On August the 22nd, while the elites at the DNC are busy patting themselves on the back with their so-called official and dignified event, Blaze Media is doing what we do best, calling out the absurdity of some good old-fashioned truth-telling, maybe a little roasting. Starting at 9 p.m. sharp, Blaze News Tonight is going live and commercial-free with a roast session to follow. And this has quite the cast, led by our very good friend, Sarah Gonzalez, and more. All right, together, they'll be counting just how many cocktails Kamala's had before she hits the stage, and more. Trust me, the results will be hilarious. It's going to be a wonderful disaster, and one that the Blaze TV crew can cover the right way, so grab your popcorn and settle in, all right? And you get a chance to watch Blaze TV roast the drunk, narcissistic cackler convention. See you Thursday at 9 on Blaze TV. Thursday at 9 on Blaze TV and YouTube and X as well. All right, coming up on today's show, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will be joining us. And we're going to get into some of the contrasting messaging between the two campaigns. And Daniel's, I think, got some really keen insight there. Also, we're going to play buy, sell, or hold. And hopefully you guys have some keen insights that we can respond to starting at the bottom of the hour. But before we get there, let us begin, as we always do, with Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by the economic Thanos, is real, and he snapped. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics this morning, around 818,000 jobs the Biden-Harris administration claimed to have created aren't actually there. Apparently, Thanos snapped and they just all disappeared. The Bureau of Labor Statistics' preliminary annual benchmark review of employment data suggests there were 818,000 fewer jobs in March of this year than were initially reported. When spread through the prior year and back to April of 2023, that indicates there were likely around 68,167 fewer net jobs added per month. That is the biggest negative revision to payrolls since the global financial crisis. Oh, and one more thing. If the revision of 818,000 fewer jobs is what they're actually saying publicly, what do you think the real number is? Night 2 of the Democrat National Convention in Chicago began with violence as street commies and pro-Hamas orcs clashed with police. 72 were arrested inside the United Center. Both Barack and Michelle Obama spoke.
My father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning.
Barack Obama said, if you think government is corrupt, you're a sucker.
The other side knows it's easier to play on people's fears and cynicism, always has been. They will tell you that government is inherently corrupt, that sacrifice and generosity are for suckers.
CNN's Van Jones, your thoughts?
I didn't know how much I missed them. I missed them. I didn't realize I had been in a spiritual desert until they created that oasis on that stage.
Well, you've found your spiritual oasis, Van, and here's your altar. According to numerous reports, the Planned Parenthood mobile baby murder bus has processed 25 child sacrifices thus far through the Democrat convention.
It all hell rejoices, James!
Moving on, RFK Jr.'s running mate Nicole Shanahan said on a podcast the campaign is weighing whether or not to drop out and endorse Donald Trump.
You know, there's two options that we're looking at, and One is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump.
CNN caught up with Trump and asked if RFK Jr. could have a role in his administration.
Well, we haven't, but I would love that endorsement because I've always liked him.
Would you also consider putting him in the administration?
You're asking me a very unusual question. I haven't been asked that question yet. I like him a lot. I respect him a lot. I probably would if something like that would happen.
Donald Trump told CBS News this week he would not use the 150-year-old Comstock Act to ban mail delivery of baby-killing drugs if elected in November. He told the CBS, quote, the federal government should have nothing to do with this issue. That angered many prominent pro-life conservative activists, including Tony Perkins of the Family Research Council, who said, quote, what President Trump is doing is suppressing his own support, in comments to Politico. On the campaign trail in Wisconsin, GOP VP hopeful J.D. Vance was asked how he's preparing to debate Tim Walz.
Well, I found a good friend from back home who embellishes and lies a lot, and I'm having him stand in for Tim Walz. That's what we're doing during our debate.
Other odds and ends, a federal judge has struck down the Federal Trade Commission's new rule that nixed non-compete agreements as a condition of employment in virtually all instances, saying the FTC doesn't actually have the authority to make such rules. A new memo from the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security says nearly 300,000 unaccompanied illegal alien children who have come across the border in recent years are unaccounted for and could be in the hands of sex traffickers or subject to forced labor at the hands of human traffickers. And finally, the Daily Wire's Matt Walsh attended last night's Democrat National Convention, donning the same undercover disguise he used for his new movie, Am I a Racist?, in theaters September 13th. Here he is photobombing Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer during an interview on CNN.
The more they see her, the more they're going to like her. I saw what she did in the Senate. We served together for 4 years. She cared about families. She could work with all kinds of people, and she was effective in getting things done. One of the things she pushed, which we succeeded in, was $35 insulin for senior citizens. Now we're going to get it for everybody.
What's your response when Trump takes credit of that?
Trump takes credit for so many things he doesn't do and gets the blame for a lot of things he does do. He's lost his bearings.
And that's what happened while we were away.
All right, Aaron's Montage is brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. They have an exclusive giveaway going on here for the rest of this month. Now through August 31st, you can register for a free Jace case for the rest of your life. No purchase is necessary to enter when you go to jace.com/dace, J-A-S-E, J-A-S-E. Jace.com/dace is where you can go to enter this contest between now and August 31st, again, at no cost. And jace.com/dace is also where you can go to purchase your own Jace case, which you definitely want. Backups of some of the best medications humanity's ever discovered. And then you can also expand it to medications that you need, just in case they become the new ivermectins and taken away from you right when you need them the most. All right, jace.com/dace and use the promo code DACE at checkout for a discount at jace.com/dace. Now, to Aaron's Montage, what happened there with the jobs report revision has literally occurred every month this year. Now, this is the biggest one and maybe the biggest one I've ever seen. Aaron, I think you said it was the biggest since the
0809
meltdown, the last documented recession we had, which I believe is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth is the traditional definition of recession, although definitions nowadays, just as we know, on many fronts aren't what they used to be. But this has been going on every month. And what you will see is this pattern too. You'll see the headlines on the first Friday of every month when the jobs report comes out, and it's rosier than what they were anticipated. The headlines of that will always be much bigger and more plentiful than the headlines of the corrections that will happen within a couple of weeks later. Funny how that works indeed. Okay. There are numerous other things in Aaron's Montage we could highlight today, but I want to spend my time on something that that I think maybe other people will overlook that you need to know. And it's also something that I have been focused on. It's my column for The Blaze that's out right now, Okay. We have talked about this on the show numerous times. I talked about it again yesterday, and I'm going to keep bringing this up because it's a problem. And some of you that aren't maybe aware of the inside baseball of how the pro-life movement operates or works or what happens within Christian conservative intelligentsia, I'm going to bring you in on the inside inner sanctum, okay? So put your ears close to your devices or radios or whatever the heck you're listening to right now. I'm going to bring you into these meetings because this is one of the things I've done most of my career. It's one of the things I did for the Cruz campaign was try to woo these very kinds of people, all right? So you need to understand how serious the situation is, that this is not something theoretically that I am addressing, but something that could absolutely cost us the election. I want to start, though, but I just want to read this piece in Politico. And the only reason I'm going to do it is because numerous people whom either I know or names you know are quoted directly. Otherwise, I would not pay attention to much of what Politico writes. Former President Trump gave his clearest answer to date on the federal regulation of abortion pills, and it's not what conservatives wanted to hear. After months of avoiding specifics, Trump told CBS News on Monday that he would not use the 150-year-old Comstock Act to ban mail delivery of abortion drugs if elected in November, adding, quote, "The federal government should have nothing to do with this issue," end quote. So what his position is saying is, you can mail order baby murder anywhere in the country. Anywhere. No idea how that would get screened. Don't know if you're sending that to teenage girls without their parents knowing. You can just mail order that stuff anywhere you want. That's what he's saying. Now, forgive me, maybe I don't, maybe English is my second language, but if we are permitting mail order abortion nationwide, then the federal government has taken a position on said issue, correct?
Correct.
Because who runs the U.S. Postal Service, guys? Is it your state government that runs the U.S. Postal Service? Who does that?
The U.S.
The U.S. government. The federal government does that. And so if the federal government is saying that the U.S. Postal Service can deliver mail order baby murder drugs right out of Soylent Green, we can just put those in every mailbox in the country. That would be a federal government policy, correct?
Yes.
The post office would only act upon actual government policy, correct?
Right.
Correct. So this actually would be the federal government taking a position. It would be saying you can circumvent any state's pro-life laws you want, make them utterly meaningless. It doesn't matter what pro-life law your state has, you can just get in the mail a pill that will cause you to have a miscarriage. Not to mention, is that even healthy? Should we be just handing those things out? What about women who maybe decide later on in life they'd like to have a baby and any of those kinds of things that could go along with that? I mean, this is the barbarism here is extensive. All right. Many prominent conservatives and anti-abortion activists were outraged by the remark, calling it, quote, nonsensical and, quote, cowardly, and warning that it could dampen turnout and enthusiasm on the right heading into a close election. Quote, it is not a pro-life position, it's not an acceptable position, and it does not provide the contrast on this issue to the degree that we have had in the past between him and Kamala Harris, said Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Quote, what President Trump is doing is suppressing his own support, end quote. Bookmark the name Tony Perkins in a minute. I'm going to come back to it. Though anti-abortion stalwarts credit Trump for appointing the Supreme Court justices who helped overturn Roe, this is far from their first clash over policy and messaging. Trump's refusal to endorse a national abortion ban and push to soften parts of the GOP platform ahead of the convention sparked outrage from corners of the right, including from his former Vice President Mike Pence. The Trump campaign did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Though abortion opponents are pouring resources into a myriad of legislative, legal, and other strategies to cut off access to abortion pills, they have seized in particular on Comstock as a means of curtailing their use without having to go through Congress. The law, passed in the 1870s and named for an official who campaigned against everything from masturbation to women's suffrage, bans mail delivery of any, quote, lewd or lascivious material, end quote, including any, quote, instrument, substance, drug, medicine, or thing, end quote, that could be used for abortion. Conservatives' Project 2025 includes the idea of using the long dormant anti-vice law to ban the mailing of the pills used in 2/3 of all abortions. And in 2023, Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, joined dozens of members of Congress in a letter urging the Justice Department to use Comstock to prosecute, quote, the reckless distribution of abortion drugs by mail. So J.D. Vance was on record with this as a U.S. Senator. Perkins and other anti-abortion activists see Trump's new rejection of Comstock as hypocritical, given his repeated calls for leaving abortion laws up to the states. They argue that declining to enforce the 19th century law is a de facto endorsement of doctors and advocacy groups that mail pills into states where they are banned. Telehealth across state lines is a major reason why the number of abortions has increased nationally since the fall of Roe, accounting for nearly 20% of all abortions in the first quarter of 2024. According to a report from the Society of Family Planning. Who are they? They're on the other side. That would be their report. That's their data, not ours. Quote, President Trump keeps saying that he wants to be out of the federal business of abortion, says Christy Hamrick, Chief Policy Strategist for Students for Life of America. We just had Kristen Hawkins from Student for Life on the show yesterday. Quote, so number one, stop funding it. And number two, end the federal prejudice in favor of this distribution, end quote. Hamrick added that Trump's Comstock stance threatens to undermine his and the GOP's claim to be the party of law and order. Quote, we can't ignore the rule of law and pick and choose the laws that we want to enforce. Isn't everybody's criticism of the Department of Justice that they have selective enforcement? So this would be the selective unenforcement of a law that says these are dangerous drugs and should not be mailed. It's very problematic for a party that says it respects the law, end quote. This week's interview is just the latest way Trump has antagonized pro-life groups that first helped him win the White House in 2016. Since he left office in 2020, he has drawn their ire for rejecting calls for federal restrictions on abortion, blaming anti-abortion activists for election losses in 2022 and 2023, which I have pointed out to you repeatedly is factually not true. So Donald Trump is either lying or was given poor information, but that's just factually not true. How many times have we pointed this out? How many times have we done this show?
Yes.
It's in our archives many, many times. It's just not accurate. And leading an effort to strip some anti-abortion planks out of the GOP party platform. Trump said, quote, abortion pills are going to be available, adding, quote, the Supreme Court has said, keep it going the way that it is, end quote. Unfortunately, this is now Lila Rose talking, quote, it seems like Trump doesn't care about the pro-life base anymore. He came out recently and said that he supported access to these deadly drugs, and that is horrific. Who is Lila Rose, by the way, if you don't know? Long before there was James O'Keefe, and long before David Daleiden got thrown in prison by Kamala Harris, or she wanted to anyway, Lila Rose is the OG of infiltrating the left undercover. She's the OG of this. Pointing out that if you, she's always looked exceedingly young for her age, played that up to make it look like she was a teenage girl, and proved to the world that Planned Parenthood would coach you how to lie as a teenage girl to get an abortion, claim you were raped, claim you were assaulted by a family member and pregnant via incest. You know, just lie and no one ever checks it. And you can do that and get your baby killed if you want. She's the OG of this. This isn't just a blog writer. Lila's not just someone who pontificates and keyboard warriors. She has more than gotten her hands dirty for this cause, more than the vast majority of people have, frankly. Students for Life has sent Trump open letters and are having, quote, a lot of backdoor conversations, end quote, with his team. Rose is lobbying Trump and other candidates to, quote, stand for life, predicting they will lose in November if they fail to do so. She's correct. That is what will happen. Quote, when Trump is publicly compromising, it's deeply discouraging to pro-life and pro-family voters, and I think he's putting his own election in jeopardy. Quite frankly, this is a losing strategy. Quote, she's right. Because I've also pointed out to you many, many times, if you vote on this issue, you're Planned Parenthood or you're us. No ads. We just had this conversation yesterday, told you about what's going on in my home state with Marionette Miller Meeks, who hates pro-lifers and people like me and has hated people like me for 20 plus years in the Republican Party of Iowa. And now in her district trying to get reelected, she is getting utterly bombarded with ads from the baby killers, even though she's totally fine with baby killing herself. The problem is she's got an R after her name. So it doesn't matter if she's fine with baby killing or not. They're going to label her that she is. So you gain nothing. You get all of the blowback from their side, and then you risk not getting the maximum benefit from your own. And I'm going to keep harping on this because I want to win. If you missed yesterday's overtime, if you're a Blaze TV subscriber, go watch that. That is the one and only time I'm going to entertain what I think will happen if we lose. I'm not having the conversation publicly again because I'm hoping it doesn't happen, which is why I'm having this conversation right now, because this is how it could. You have to see the overall strategy here. The overall strategy here, and this goes back to the June debate. Why such an early debate? The dilemma Democrats have is that it's not about whether or not they can find the votes that they think they need. It's about whether or not there's a credible narrative that accompanies them. So in 2020, Donald Trump shut down the country. Donald Trump mean tweets. Donald Trump had record low, favorables as president. Donald Trump's personally unliked. Okay, and they used all of that. They published these ridiculous polls like Biden's going to win Wisconsin by 12. All of that, when he won it, I barely won. Okay, all of that was done to craft a narrative to justify turning out the votes that they need. That's what that was all done. That it would be believable that Uncle Joe, Mr. Nice Guy, they brought him out of retirement. That it would be a believable narrative to justify that guy got 81 million votes. That guy's more popular than Barack Obama is, apparently. The reason they wanted this early debate is they needed to test the theorem, if that was going to hold up. Which is why if Joe Biden had gone in there that night and survived, that's the last time we would have seen a debate. And the last time maybe we would have seen him on the campaign trail, that he'd have been deeper in the closet than he was in 2020. They'd have put him in the bowels of the closet Pete Buttigieg came out of. But they needed to test it. Because if he goes out there and he's senile from the jump, no one's going to believe that guy got 81 million votes. Well, what happened, guys? He went out there and he was what? Senile from the jump. That's why he had to go. They don't have a narrative. The Yaz Queen thing they're conducting right now is to justify a narrative. They don't care if you guys... Rasmussen can produce a poll every day for the rest of this election that shows Trump winning Pennsylvania by 1 point. Winning Michigan by a point. Wisconsin by a point. They don't care. Winning by 2. They don't care. Why? Because that's well within the MOC, baby. If that gets right-wing media off, if that does it for you, they don't care. Because that's a justifiable narrative. I mean, the poll showed it was razor close the whole time. It was just razor close again. We cannot play into this narrative. We cannot play into it. Much of the 2020 campaign, Trump played into their narrative. The COVID task force meetings were 90% of them a disaster. And almost every time he showed up on stage, they descended into bickering back and forth over things the American people did not care about at that point in time because they're all being scared to death. Debbie Birx, Mike Pence, and Anthony Fauci had complete control of the White House, basically. And look what happened. They were off message. Here's the thing. Dude still way overperformed the polls. Even with all of that, even with the turnout. Okay, even with all of that, the dude way overperformed the polls. He wrecked the Real Clear Politics polling average. We just showed you that data yesterday on the show again, right? Yes. In other words, go back and watch every show we did yesterday. Both the overtime and this show, the regular show and the overtime will set up a lot of what I'm telling you right now. The information is there. They're creating it again. Oh, I mean, I know it was so razor close, but I mean, look at this article in Politico. Pro-life leaders pointing out that Trump's depressing his own base. And look, oh my gosh, look, we had 23% evangelical turnout in the overall electorate instead of 26. And that was just enough, Todd. That was just enough to tilt the scales. And look, Trump lost those suburbs where those mega churches are, and the margins were razor close, and that was just enough to be made up in Philadelphia, and in Atlanta, and in Charlotte, and in Vegas, and in Maricopa County, in Arizona. It was just enough, guys, in Richmond. Oh, man. The country's just so balkanized. He is playing into their narrative. He is. And we need to stop this on August 21st so that we're all not doing the show on November the 6th we fear the most. We need to stop this right now. There are things we cannot control. We cannot control that every month the Bureau of Labor Statistics is going to revise down its job market negatively. And then the same media will spend far less time covering that than they will the original, somewhat rosy report that was a lie from the jump. Can we control that?
No.
We cannot. Can we control the ballot harvesting operations they have within these handful of counties they completely control in these battleground states? Can we control any of that? Can we do anything about that?
Apparently not. I thought we could, but...
After doing... Let me rephrase the question because you're right. After 4 years of doing nothing about it,
yes.
Okay, and with the election less than 11 weeks away, is there anything that we can now do about this, Todd?
Release the Kraken.
Correct. There's nothing we can do. Now, there were things we could have done for the last 4 years. We largely did not do them. So now that we didn't, and we're less than 11 weeks until the election, is there now anything about that we can do? No, nothing we can do. Can we do anything at all about the Yas Queen narrative they're spending literally $500 million on right now, is what they're spending right now? Can we do anything about that?
No.
We can't. We can't do anything about that. Now, I know the tendency within our movement and on our side and within our ecosystem is to lament, bitch, complain, kvetch, and counter clickbait about things we cannot control. So, because if we're all being honest with each other, many of us on the right like playing victim too. This will never be the show for that. My worldview comes from the armies of the living God, and not even the grave could hold my Lord. He holds the keys to death and Hades in his hand, and that's when he's bored. All right? So I don't do that here. There's about 700 other shows you can go to that'll rub your belly and tell you, it's okay, they'll steal it from us again, but we expose something apparently. No, go do that somewhere else. Make those people rich. I want to win. I like winning. Winning is what I like. And I kind of think second place is the first loser, according to the great prophet known as Ricky Bobby. I want to win. No silver medals in Olympics when it's an election. No silver medals in this event. It's win or go home. We're in a worldview steel cage match. 2 men enter, 2 worldviews enter, and only one's walking out. And I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I like politics better when my side wins. Can I get an amen?
Amen.
I like it a lot better. And I don't like it at all when my side doesn't. And this is where we play into their narrative. We win whites by 16 points instead of 19. We get 75% of the white evangelical vote instead of 81. We get 24 or 23% of turnout within how much evangelicals make up of the entire electorate rather than 25 or 26.
Donald Trump, do you even art of the deal, bro?
This is where they look at they look at the exits and they do the math. And nothing was stolen from you. He underperformed with his own demographics, and look, your own leaders complained. And I want to go to these complaints when we come back. You need to understand why hearing people like Tony Perkins complain publicly at this stage is such a warning sign. I'll show you in a moment. As students begin heading back to school, I want to tell you about a great learning opportunity from our friends at Hillsdale College. I mean, if you're tuned into us here on The Blaze, you're one of the most informed audiences in America. But then you also know, man, learning never stops. If you're looking for another outlet, another tool, I mean, we're not live all the time, right, here at The Blaze. So how about our friends over at Hillsdale? They have a lot of quality Hillsdale College podcasts via the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, like the Larry Arnn Show, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, and Online Courses Podcast. All of these are top-notch. You can find them on all major podcast platforms. They've got millions of downloads. It's the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. One of the ways our friends at Hillsdale are defending liberty on the battlefield of education. So find your new second favorite next to us, your new second favorite podcast today on the Hillsdale College Podcast Network at daceforhillsdale.com, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com. Again, that's daceforhillsdale.com. This is a time I think we need to be really blunt. If we all agree, well, I'm not sure we all agree. For those of us that agree that we cannot afford an L to these people, that taking the last 4 years and then compounding it with another 4, so now it's a force multiplier, and then risking that seeping into some of the gains we've gained in states like Virginia and North Carolina in the last couple of cycles, is not a good place for us to be, given where we already are as a people. Were headlines about nuclear war with Russia. I saw those in the news for the first time since you and I were kids, Todd. What's happening on multiple fronts? Heck, we just disappeared 818,000 jobs. Guys, I live in a state that doesn't have a city that has 818,000 people that live in it. And not even close, actually. Not even close. There's lots of states that don't have a single city with 818,000 people living in it. That's how many jobs we just disappeared in the last 2 weeks. So if you're with me on this, we cannot take an L here. Then I think we have to have very blunt conversations, like the kinds of conversations Nimitz and MacArthur are having in the winter and spring of 42. All right? Because you really got to understand what's occurring here in order to even get to a Midway, let alone a Guadalcanal and an Iwo Jima. There are reasons. So I'm going to have one of those blunt conversations with you right now. Really blunt, like even more blunt than I normally do. There are not too many shows between the size of the platform of The Blaze, our own audience, the amount of experience I've had working with evangelical causes and leaders and issues and candidates all over the country. Very few people that have spent more time in the last decade mobilizing that base of people than I have. There are people who have, but it's a small list. You may notice that a lot of the typical names, Tony Perkins, Ralph Reed, they're never on this show. Todd, have I ever asked you to book those guys on the show one time?
Not that I recall.
Aaron, how about when you booked the show before Todd did? Ever ask you to book those kinds of people on the show?
No, if I'd suggested that, you would have fired me.
Correct. I'm never asked to speak at their events. Again, how many people talk to more of evangelicals than I do, and I'm never asked to speak at their events? Why do you think that is on both sides? Because I know who these people are. I've seen how they work. They're completely ineffective. They're somewhere from cowardly, most of them. Tony Perkins could not even deliver his home state of Louisiana to us in the Ted Cruz campaign. Couldn't even win his home state for us. I would not recommend you give money to the Family Research Council, and if they approached our sales staff, asked me to help them raise money, I would refuse. No, I don't think it's a worthwhile endeavor. If the American Family Association asked us to help raise money for them, I would. I've seen them be effective. And frankly, I just don't trust people like Ralph Reed. I think the Republican Party could nominate a yellow dog with rabies And they tell us that it was from dear Mr. Jesus himself. And that's important to understand with what I'm about to tell you. I mean, Tony Perkins went from free the delegates to that evening speaking for Trump at the convention. These are seat at the table people. Some of them because they like being sitting next to the king at the table like Ralph Reed does. And some of them, frankly, because they just don't have the balls to do what must be done. And that's been Tony Perkins as long as I've known him and known of him. This is the most urine and vinegar I've ever seen Tony Perkins demonstrate. Ever. And I can't even think of a second, what would be second on my list. I mean, I remember being on personal phone calls with Tony Perkins trying to sell me on Mitt, I've done taxpayer-funded abortions, Romney. And so now he wants to draw down on the president that overturned Roe. And he's going to do it now in the general election after the primary. I think we should ask why. I'm going to tell you why. You know, our president here, Gaston Mooney, spent several years working on Capitol Hill. You guys have heard us tell it. We've told the audience this before, yeah. And he worked for, one of the people he worked for was Jim DeMint, who was basically the leader of the conservative caucus in the Senate at the time. And when you work for the leader of the conservative caucus, you're basically the leader of the Senate conservative staffers, right? And they had a name for much of the national pro-life, national right-to-life intelligentsia. They called them Big Baby. And that they were often much more in line with what's going to raise money and give us a talking point than what's going to be effective. Gaston's not shy about this. We heard it from him. He's even said it on this show before. Go ask him. He'll tell you. He's got the stories to tell you. He served on Capitol Hill. He's seen many of these people operate behind closed doors. And it's much of what I've seen behind closed doors and out in the open, frankly. There's a reason why it took us 50 years to overturn Roe. We had technology showing that the fetus was a live baby capable of feeling and sensing everything going back to the mid-70s. Why did it take this long? This is why. We're our own worst enemy. Now, what's the inverse of that? The inverse of that would be, well, if we get rid of abortion, I'm out of a job. What's the inverse of that, though? If we're going to put an abortion drug in every mailbox potentially in America, I'm also out of a job. How do I go sell that to voters? This isn't, I absolutely, well, I shouldn't say it's not at all about the principle for people like Perkins, but it's an inverted ratio because the number one principle is seat at the table. See, they're doing, Todd, what you want Trump to do. They're doing the art of the deal math. I can promise you, we couldn't, those of us that were pro DeSantis in the primary, we begged these people to hold Trump accountable for what he was saying about abortion in the primary. Instead, they attacked DeSantis. These are mostly seat at the table people, folks. So the reason that, and I would remove Lila from that group. I have a lot of respect for her. She has been on this show several times. But Perkins and these other guys, they're coming after him because they know this dog's not going to hunt. They're hearing from their own donors. They're hearing from their own lists. We can't sell that. We can't sell that. At least not at the numbers necessary for us to win this election. That's what's going on here. And that's why you should listen to them. Because one thing I know about these people is if they can do anything, man, it's this. They are cosmically good at that. If they know how to do anything, it's not move an agenda, it's not move votes, it's not push the party to the right. But if there's one thing I know that I've seen with my own eyes, these people are real good at, it's figuring out which way the trade winds are blowing. They're really good at that. And so if those people are coming to you and saying, this ain't gonna work, and they're saying it in late August, because normally those have been the people that have said to people like me when we nominated the Mitt McCains in the past, shut up, Deese. You're killing us, Deese. You're hurting us, Deese. You're going to cost us the election, Deese. And now all of a sudden, they're the ones that are going to lead the insurgency against the most pro-life president we've ever had. This is about one thing and one thing only. They're reading the room, and they know this is not sellable to their people. And that should make all of us who want to win this election very concerned. Because these people know how to read a room. It's about all they know how to do. It's about all they often even try to do. But it's also what they know how to do. I don't think you understand what it would take for them to sound more radical than Steve Deace to the Republican nominee for president less than 80 days before an election. You don't understand how bad they think it really could get with our base. And you should listen to them. They know. I wouldn't tell you to donate to many of them. Wouldn't tell you to get on most of their lists. But when it comes to this is like God talking to Moses. They know. They know. This is their game. It's their native tongue. And they can see it's going to be really hard to get the numbers we need if now our nominee is, we're fine putting an abortion in every mailbox in America. No matter who goes and gets the mail. That isn't going to work. Which brings me to the Trump side of this. My first wide release book, Rules for Patriots, How Conservatives Can Win Again, the 10 Commandments of Political Warfare. Ironically enough, the most prominent endorsement, and that book has a who's who of endorsements. Gingrich endorsed that book. Leaders of Freedom Works, Club for Growth, many national groups endorsed that book. But the most prominent endorsement of them all, none other than Donald Trump endorsed that book for me. One of those 10 commandments of political warfare, never, ever abandon your base unless they're morally wrong. Trump is abandoning his base here. Now, you could agree that they're tactically wrong. You could say, hey, this isn't the time for this. He's just got to win. I don't agree with your analysis and have pointed out why I don't think it's right, but I don't think you're necessarily immoral either. We're having a tactical disagreement here. You can think that these leaders speaking out now is tactically wrong. And the juice isn't worth the squeeze. You might even be right. I don't agree with you based on my experience, but, you know, as Todd likes to say, the status quo is the status quo around here until it isn't anymore, right? My experience counts great until the day comes that it no longer does, and you rarely see the moment coming when your experience no longer counts, right? Right, okay. But what you cannot argue is they're morally wrong. I mean, if you're out there sharing on your social media this week that the Democrats have mobile baby murder stations out in front of their convention, but then you're like, it's morally righteous to put an abortion in every mailbox in America. That's not that's not how this works. Not how any of this works. It's a couple of mobile abortion clinics. And that's going to be and we did that show too yesterday. How many headlines are we going to generate on our side? But we're quiet as kept about putting one in every mailbox in America? No. Can't be that party. Can't win. Doesn't win. Nobody wants to join with that in the end. People hate that. It reeks as blatant hypocrisy to them, which in a morally subjective society can become like the number one sin. So you can tactically disagree, but you cannot morally disagree. It is not moral to make every mailbox in America a potential abortion clinic. There's nothing moral about that. Nothing. It's the opposite of moral, in fact. And so this is in peril. And he's violating this commandment. He doesn't have to. Our base loves him, wants to max turnout. Will offer him way more grace than just about any other Republican I can think of in my lifetime, or at least my voting lifetime. But he has to accept the offer, guys. You know what I'm saying?
It's just part of the deal.
Yeah, the preacher can sit there and scream, come forward and get forgiven all he wants. Trump has to get out of the pew and come forward.
That's the irony of all this. You said you were, even while supporting DeSantis, you were going to art of the deal with Trump if Trump ended up winning. After the assassination, Aaron and I did the same thing. A lot of people on the right are doing art of the deal with Donald Trump. He's the one who won't do it right now.
Take the offer. I will tell you, I had two very prominent people, names you would probably know, ping me this morning over this. There was a follow-up call to this article recently held where all these leaders got on the call together. It did not go well, I am told. Why? Because they can see what I've been telling you for the last 2 weeks about this is true. This is going to cost us the election. If for no other reason, it's going to hand them the narrative to justify, man, can you believe we won Georgia by 12,000 votes twice in a row? Man, it's just so razor close, guys. And look, nothing was stolen from you. I mean, Trump saw his, by the way, in the Iowa caucuses, we had the lowest evangelical turnout in the history of the Iowa caucuses. Not just the lowest GOP turnout in the history of the Iowa caucuses, we had the lowest evangelical turnout in the history of the Iowa caucuses. The data points they want to run their game, to run their scheme, and then justify it again in the weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're helping them line this up. It's self-defeating. And so until we stop stepping on this rake, I'm going to keep warning about it. And I know there are some of you that won't want to hear it. You'll get annoyed. You'll get sick of it. I'll be sick of saying it. But I'm going to do that now, no matter what it'll cost me now, because the cost of not doing it and then watching what we all fear take place on November the 5th is way more extraordinary than whatever short-term cost I'm going to face right now for sounding the alarm about this. We don't have to do this. And if you're at the point that you have turned a guy who thinks people like me are the problem, Tony Perkins and his ilk would sell people like me up the river for the seat next to any GOP small L lord that ever got anointed head of the party. If you've got him now being the one sounding prophetic, warning you, if you have forced Tony Perkins into a corner where he feels he has no other out, he can't have any more private conversation. He can't do any more private pleading. He can't do anything more, that he has to now publicly take you on head on. That should speak volumes to you about how concerning this is. And I'm not just a purist complaining for the last 2 weeks. This could cost us this election. It could hand them the data point they need to justify why Kamala got 82 million votes, cackling all the way. So no, as annoying as this show is going to be talking about this until it is fixed, I can promise you it won't be nearly as annoying talking about it until it is fixed as it will be tragic the conversations we'll have to have after this election if it's not. All right, that was a pretty heavy hour. We'll come back, lighten things up, I think. I don't know. We'll see what you guys have for suggestions. All right, with buy, sell, or hold here next. We're back here with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzen, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. And I'm sure a few of you think something about what we think after that first hour. Let us know what that is by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. You can also, if you wouldn't mind, if you like the show, that is, leave us a 5-star review. And a lot of you have indicated that you do with that method. We appreciate all of those. Please keep them coming. You can also hit subscribe, or in the case of iTunes, follow. And that will also make sure that every time we do a new show, it shows up in your feed every single time. So we thank you for all of you that have done that too. Want to thank our friends over at Lassie Health for making this part of the show possible, like buy, sell, or hold. Now that's LAASY. And Lassie Health knows that We're hurting right now on many fronts, including spiraling out of control healthcare costs. And that's what Lassie aims to correct. It's not health insurance. It's access to healthcare that you want without all the red tape, restrictions, and inflated costs. They've got coverage plans that start as low as $30 a month. What do you get for even their baseline $30 a month plan? Over 400 prescription medications for free unlimited virtual mental health counseling, free 24/7 virtual urgent care, lab tests for up to 60% off, imaging tests for up to 75% off, and more. That's their baseline plan. There's no annual or lifetime caps on services. You can start a plan at any time tailored to your needs. So as you can see, folks, Lassie Health is a game changer. Check out affordable plans that put you in control of your health care at healthylink.com/Steve. That's healthylink.com/Steve. For a limited time, get your first month or up to $100 off eligible plans. You can get that for free right now. And so get healthy, be healthy, and stay healthy without breaking the bank at healthylink.com/Steve. All right, the bottom of the hour, Daniel Horowitz will join us. It is now time for Buy, Sell, or Hold. We will get through as many of these as we can. Aaron has the submissions. Todd, you and I have not seen them. After we do, we will decide. Are we going to buy that? Are we going to sell that? No penalties for holds this week. I think the first hour was painful enough probably for the audience. Fair.
Tough,
there was
fair.
there was some painful truth there that I think needed to be said, however. So let's just lighten things up, we hope anyway, and let's play the game. Aaron.
Yeah, let us begin and lighten things up with our friend Steve Friend, who says the FBI has already cautioned social media companies to be on the lookout for censoring foreign malign influence in the form of Denny Hastert-like allegations against a vice presidential candidate. Buy, sell, or hold. That's happened.
Buy.
Oh, I would buy. Yeah, I would buy that. I mean, I would imagine those of us even who have communicated they have that vibe, such as me, for example, we're already on every list, which is why I know maybe it's counterintuitive, but I almost feel like the fact that this is open knowledge now, that we are so aware of this, I actually feel freer.
Yeah, you know
what I'm saying? Like I realize now I'm on every list imaginable, probably. So YOLO, right? Might as well just say what I want. Yeah, I'm already tagged. I'm already pegged. Just might as well go full Bulworth at this point and let it rip, right?
And that includes all of you who think you're somehow dodging that bullet by being anonymous. I mean, I can't stress enough, just psychologically, if everybody who thinks they have to protect whatever they're protecting by being anonymous weren't anonymous and lived accordingly in their, not only online, but more importantly in their communities like that, everything would change. But you won't do that. And they know who you are anyways, by the way. Get busy living or get busy dying, man.
Amen.
We go to uncontexted Dace 2 Electric Boogaloo, who says Steve should collaborate with Eric. Is it Julie or July?
It's July.
July to create a nefarious comic series for the Rippaverse. Look at this mock-up. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That is a really cool cover. I mean, who put that together?
I think that's uncontexted Dace 2. He or she is really good at Photoshops.
I mean, I'm just going to buy I'm just going to buy the cover.
Yep.
I mean, that cover is incredible. I'll buy that for sure. You bet.
That would be a good comic.
Yes.
Great comic. Ready-made. Connor B. Says Christianity Today and the Gospel Coalition will come out with a defense of the monkey god demon by the end of the week.
Bye.
Yes. The Christian case for monkey gods deep in the heart of Texas. That's right. You're showing your love that apparently every previous generation of Texan did not understand or demonstrate or show. They're all in hell now because they didn't understand love your neighbors, you love yourself meant that we had to have a Nebuchadnezzar chocolate bunny-sized statue to a monkey god in Sugarland. Yes.
I'm already getting that on my Twitter feed. It's like the ultimate. The First Amendment is the ultimate trapdoor. It's like, yes, the whole thing was there all along.
I'm sure the founding fathers envisioned a 90-foot-tall statue to a demon monkey. Yeah, that's what they meant. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Set your monkey feet!
Even if that is your interpretation of what religious liberty and the First Amendment means, even if that's your interpretation, ask yourself this question, okay? Why is this being built now? Why wasn't it there in 1994? Why wasn't it there in 1984? Why wasn't it there in 1974? Why wasn't it there in 1964? Why wasn't it there in 1904? 1884? See what I'm saying?
Of course.
Even if that is your interpretation of what religious liberty entails, ask yourself, fine, let's step aside from the legal constitutional argument about what religious liberty does or doesn't mean, all right? Ask yourself, what has happened spiritually on a cultural level that is there now in Sugar Land, Texas? And it wasn't there before. No comforting answers to that question.
Nope.
Next up, we go to G. Harmon, who says the Antifa Hamas rioters will be permitted to breach the DNC convention on Thursday to create sympathy for Kamala.
How would that create sympathy for Kamala?
That's what I wondered.
I would think it would be the other way around. I mean, there's a far greater likelihood to be shooting those people on Thursday. Okay, I'll sell. I don't see how being overrun by Hamas orcs creates sympathy for Kamala. They've created those barricades because they know that it does not. Okay, so I'm going to sell on that. Maybe there's an angle I'm missing. If so, fill us in. But just based on your articulated submission, I would have the opposite read, actually. I mean, if I were the Trump campaign, I'd be praying that they break through those barricades and show themselves there.
So.
Next, we will go to Matthias Nielsen, who says the only pandemic we will see this election year will be the monkeypox outbreak that comes after the DNC. No, I'm sorry, that was the RNC. Okay, they don't even believe in like life or even acting on just heinous, perverted desires over there. They're just done. They're post sex.
Post, nice. I'm gonna buy though. I like it. I think it's affectionately snotty, and I appreciate that. Yeah. Even though Aaron's probably right.
Next, pipe hitter 808 GMGN says Tampon Tim will eat hummus with Hamas before Trump eats cake with suburban moms supporting a pro-life message.
I'm going to sell on this. I mean, this guy, the greatest frustration with him is things can change minute by minute. On the other hand, the greatest hope with him is that things can change minute by minute. It would not. Let me give you a just in another context, okay? For 3 years, all of us in Trump's base, to some degree, have yelled at him about Operation Warp Speed, and much of the best work that's been done on Operation Warp Speed come from Trump loyalists themselves, like Steve Bannon, for example. Okay, he has somewhere between ignored, lectured, and condemned all of us for daring to hold him to account on this and getting him to turn, right? Okay? Let me give you a sequence of events that occurred just this week. Out of nowhere, Trump has a meeting with medical freedom people. And if you saw the pictures, it's a pretty personal meeting. I mean, there's 5 of them, and they're sitting at a table together where they're having a dialogue. And one of the organizations that is represented there are people we know very well. They're friends of ours, We the Patriots USA. These are true believers, guys. I mean, We the Patriots USA, Matt Staver at Liberty Counsel were the 2 first legal groups on the right that went to war against COVID that I'm aware of anyway. Maybe there's some others. You had individuals like Tom Renz, an individual lawyer from Ohio. Okay, he did some great work on this from the jump. But in terms of legal organizations, the 2 first that I am aware went to war in the courts over what was going on with COVID were Matt Staver at Liberty Counsel and Brian Festa and his team at We the Patriots USA. So they're not going to, I know these people, they're not going to just sit down just so Trump can get a photo op. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And the setting indicates they got more than that. This was a private meeting. It's 5 of them at a table. He heard some stuff. Okay? That happens. The next day, RFK Jr.'s vice president goes on the record. They're thinking about dropping out and endorsing Trump. She reiterated that again yesterday, I think on Fox News, actually. Maybe those are coincidences. Maybe they're not. I kind of think they're not. Meaning that When a deal was presented to him, you want RFK Jr. out of the race? Here are some steps that need to be taken. These are the kinds of things you do when you're doing the art of the deal that you talked about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You go from ignoring your base for 3 years on medical freedom to, well, now I'm going to sit down with the people that were suing my own shot at We the Patriots USA. You start doing stuff like that when you truly are being consistently adherent to your own art of the deal philosophy, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's a coincidence at all that these meetings with these medical freedom people happened the day before RFK Jr.'s VP started talking about dropping out and endorsing Trump. I don't. Be a hell of a coincidence. That's why I don't think it is one. So, at any moment, at any time, Trump could cut the deal. If we come in here tomorrow and in Aaron's montage is a rushed meeting held with Tony Perkins and Lila Rose and Donald Trump, and Trump's deeply now concerned about Comstock and thinks Amendment 4 in his home state of Florida is going too far, would you be shocked to hear that if that was in the montage tomorrow?
No.
I wouldn't.
Not shocked.
And how about any day between now and Election Day? Would you be shocked if that was in the montage? On the other hand, would you be shocked if it wasn't?
No.
No. Herein lies Trump as small L, very small L, Lord. This is what happens when Trump is Lord, when someone like Trump with his mercurial nature is Lord of the manor. And he is. Okay? At any point in time, I mean, we stopped trying to reach him on the medical freedom stuff. We just gave up and endorsed DeSantis instead, right? 6 months later, he's meeting with our own friends at We the Patriots USA. At any point in time, a deal can be cut. At any point in time. At any point in time, a deal may not be cut. You don't know. And that's why I'm out of the business of projecting what Donald Trump will do in the future, so I will sell.
I will narrowly buy. Listen, we've talked very recently about how, Steve just went on a rant earlier this week about still can't believe, and he got to know why he didn't capitalize on the assassination attempt better and with the messaging. And so it makes me wonder if he's going to, I guess if you're waiting on any big splash on any of this, holding it all back until after everybody sees the grotesque DNC with their own eyes, and then you provide the lifeboat afterwards, okay.
Pardon me?
So, I can wait 5 days, but what you showed us post-assassination is not a good preview of expecting this.
All right, next we go to Joe Defiant, who says eating raw garlic is better than drinking vinegar.
Garlic's really good for you. So I'm not, I'm all ears. I would simply say that I think a lot more people get garlic regularly in their diet than vinegar, though. So I'm going to have to sell, but I'm not offended by it. If you have both, these are super groups here. Yes.
Are we fighting vampires now?
They're both better than pumpkin spice. Then I
sell on those grounds alone. All right. Someone sent me a meme, by the way, that clove and cinnamon are good for warding off evil spirits, and that's what makes up pumpkin spice. No.
Yeah, essential oils stuff, kind of. Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. Someone sent me that meme this morning. I have no idea if that's true or not, but that was a meme in my inbox.
I bet it is.
So then you should take that back and repent. The Lord rebuke you.
Oh, I'll bring the garlic.
No, I'm talking about clove and cinnamon making up fighting off evil spirits, and that's what makes up pumpkin spice. You should repent of your blasphemy against pumpkin spice just now.
I didn't say it, but garlic. I'm just saying garlic and vinegar are better.
Okay. Our friends over at Voice of Judah understand that there is a unique opportunity right now in the nation of Israel to bring them the gospel, and that's what they're doing right now. They're on the ground in Israel right now, inspiring evangelism, discipleship. They're even doing church planting there in the land of Israel. They also help to reach the Jewish people with humanitarian outreach to support all Israelis. If you want to help them bring the gospel back to the birthplace that gave it to the rest of the world, and help fulfill our duty on behalf of the Great Commission as well. The fields are ripe. All right. but the workers are few. And this is where we need to now pray that the Lord sends out enough workers for his harvest. And that could be you. You can rise up with Voice of Judah Israel today. Visit their website, vojisrael.org/Steve. That's vojisrael.org/Steve to learn more about their inspiring work blessing Israel at vojisrael.org/Steve.
Next, we go to Samaritan Prime. RFK will drop out and Trump will make him CIA director.
So,
I can't possibly see Trump making him CIA director. Could I see something like HHS or something like that? I think
HHS,
that's possible.
And it should happen
or like put him on the
yesterday.
FDA and make him a commissioner in the FDA. That I could see.
Protect your flanks, man. Take care of this abortion issue and get RFK into the fold. And that'll hopefully take care of some of the COVID issue. Art of the deal.
Mm-hmm. I think you're exactly right, everything you just said. And keep in mind, Trump could have released all the files on the Kennedy assassination when he was president, and he didn't. So then I'm going to make RFK Jr. head of the CIA. I'd love that. Okay. I mean, I might just dedicate the show into being daily what would come of that. But I also think that he would be an absolute menace, and I mean this in a complimentary way, in the other, not quite as high profile, but also very important positions that we just talked about, whether it's on the FDA as a commissioner, somewhere involved in HHS, something like that. Yeah. I could see that for sure, but I think CIA, I can't see Trump doing that.
All right, we go to Tyler Bruder. Virginia is more in play for Trump than Michigan is.
I'll buy.
I could buy that if you're saying, Gretchen Whitmer can outperform polling by 9 points on election day, and she controls the whole state, and it's basically a crime now to report crimes of voter fraud in Michigan. And so who knows what the margin of cheating is? Who has a clue how an election will operate there? Now Glenn Youngkin's probably going to lose in court, would be my guess, but he's at least issuing executive orders, because they'll probably find some federal puke somewhere to put some injunction on it. But he's at least issuing executive orders demanding paper ballots. So he would be more inclined, I think, to have some form of a fair election there, even though demographically Michigan might be favorable if it was a fair fight, but it's probably not. So if that's the rationale for your analysis, let's just say I'll buy it, because I'll also add this. My number one goal strategically in trying to win this election is to not be sitting here on election night hoping Michigan comes in for the win. Okay? Put it this way, I've mentioned this to you a couple times. Wisconsin, I had a little birdie tell me, who's a pollster for the Trump campaign, Wisconsin is the worst voter rolls he's ever seen. This is why the Wisconsin polling is so bad, because, they don't just cold call people. They are polling off of voter rolls, because the most likely way to determine if someone's going to vote in this election is if they have voted in the previous ones, right? Just like you're much more likely to upsell a client that already has purchased from you than you are to cold call and find a brand new client. Okay. So the reason why the polling in Wisconsin has been so bad is because their voter rolls are so bad. And as bad as they are, I would be much more comfortable needing Wisconsin to put us over at the top on November the 5th than Michigan, if that tells you what I think of Michigan. All right. And so if that's your premise, then I would agree with it and I'll buy. And I'm going to assume that it probably is your premise.
Todd, anything else to add?
No, I'm buying.
Okay. LaLava says the mainstream media will force Kamala Harris to do unscripted press conferences.
At least once they will. At least once they will.
So,
if indeed they show that and not because they want access to her or care, but if they think it's hurting her polling, I could see that happens. So I'll buy.
So
we go to TNTW. Kennedy dropping out and backing Trump doesn't hurt either party, but it does make the Democrats nervous. Is that possible? If it's not hurting them, why would they get nervous? Am I missing something?
No, I will buy that it can make them nervous, and that this takes away a narrative point. So I spent an hour railing at the Trump campaign that you're handing them talking points for their narrative. So let me spend 5 minutes. That's fair. Not at all. My bad. All right. So this is an angle I should have approached about this. Let me give the Trump campaign credit if they can pull this off. And I'm going to assume they can. Like, I don't think the conversation would be out in the open publicly if it were not at least at the serious negotiation stage at the least. Is that fair? Mm-hmm. Okay. Doesn't mean they can, get to the altar, but they're at least, the music's playing, man, and they're at least thinking about walking down the aisle. Fair. Okay. That takes away one of their narratives. Well, you had this other insurgent candidate out there on all these ballots, and he got 2 to 3%. We won all these places by 1 or 2%, and he did to you. Who is the consumer advocate guy that they always blame the 2000 election
Nader.
on? Ralph Nader, thank you. He Ralph Nadered you guys, so what goes around comes around. This would be the Trump campaign smartly taking a piece off the chessboard that does play into their narrative. So give them credit for that if they can pull it off.
Bye.
Next, we go to Dacian Memes for Unenlarged Spleens, who says Steve's next piece for The Blaze should be a letter to liberal women, calling them correct, and it should be titled Dace's Epistle to the Fallopians.
To the Fallopians. I like Dace's, given the little play on there, the Philippians. I get you. I'm feeling you. The Fallopians.
So,
I like the pun, so I'll buy. As a guy that is trying to get good at dad jokes, it's cringy enough. I'll buy. It's very cringe.
Let's see. Next thing is from Steve Senny, who has a list of top 10 things that he trusts more than Harrison Walls. Number 10. Number 10, Lindsey Graham's interior design for a man cave.
Oh, I mean, I trust that over many things. Yeah. You bet. Yeah.
Number 9, carpooling with JFK.
Yikes. If that's number 9, I don't even. What are the other 8?
Number 8, a mixed drink from Diddy.
Ooh, dude. Oh, my word.
Number 7, advice about caring for babies from Francis Collins.
Yeah, who funds the research on them? Yeah.
Number 6, seating charts designed by Tim Keller.
For those of you who don't know what that's a reference to, in late stages of his life, Tim Keller, sadly, segregated his church in New York City by vax status. That's what he did. Segregated the brethren by vax status in his church.
Number 5, bringing a lightsaber to Todd's house for a duel on college football opening Saturday.
There are many things you can do to take your life into your own hands. Several of them have already been listed, but that is a high peril event. Okay, that is you essentially trying to do your version of suicide by cop. You are basically saying, I'm done here, I'm tuning out, and I just don't have the stones to call Jack Kevorkian or hit the drip myself, so let me just run into Todd's yard with a lightsaber. That's basically what you are doing. You are saying, goodbye, cruel world. That is a parting gift to the planet on your behalf.
I'm blushing, yes.
Number 4, Bruce Jenner's breast milk.
Oh, my God.
Have we... Steve said he ain't playing.
This list is not playing around. I love it. And Bruce Jenner's breast milk, frankly, should have been a reference we heard on this show way until August 21st of 2024. What is this audience doing? I'm ashamed of you. Yes.
Number 3 on the top 10 things Steve Senny trusts more than Harris Walls. Nigerian prince inheritance email.
Nice. Very nice.
Number 2, a prostate exam from Captain Hook.
Oh, my gosh.
And number 1, a hug from a Hamas guy with a backpack.
Oh, wow. That list, I think...
Sufficiently dark.
Yes, that is Vanta Black, and I do think it sufficiently articulates my angst level about this election, is that list.
Yes.
Yes. Well done. Buy it all. As tragic as it all is.
All right, moving on, we go to Jim Stocker. Most voters aren't interested in truth or policy, but rather satisfying their own ego. People will vote for whichever candidate makes them feel more virtuous for their support. It's 90% emotional, 10% intellectual. To most, their vote is a virtue signal.
Bye. Narcissism over principle. Absolutely.
I think your ratio is way too high. But I think your premise is becoming increasingly sound. And this is part of the social media era, okay? And having it emerge right at the time we're the most godless people we've ever been. And so whenever you become godless, one of the first things you'll do is you'll exchange worship of the creator with the created, right? And what's the highest created being? Us. So we worship ourselves, So I think your premise is sound, so I'll buy, even though I think the ratio is a little, if not a lot, egregious. But I could, without revival, we'll eventually get to what you're talking about.
Even total depravity, bro?
Fair.
Next, we go to Brad Andrews. The year is 2065. John Ossoff, then 78, and Josh Hawley, then 85, will be the last 2 representatives left of the Uniparty and release a report from an underground bunker saying, in retrospect, socialism was a really bad idea without making a formal recommendation to do anything.
So I love this concept. I think it's unfair to put Josh Hawley in there. Okay. But so I will buy, again, the premise of your concept. Yeah. Okay. I think including Josh Hawley in there is not fair to him. I'd give him way more credit than that. Okay. But he's actually been willing to use his voice for things that matter. But your overall premise, I buy. I mean, you saw it this week. I mean, the Republicans come out with a report. They finally come out with their impeachment evidence report against Biden a month after he's been taken out of the race. And as terrible as that was, Congressman Warren Davidson from Ohio subtweeted me on X this week and said, Steve, it's actually worse than that. House leadership wasn't going to release the report at all. We had to force them to do even that. They weren't even going to release the report at all. To which I started thinking, the year is 2035. We have become a fully owned subsidiary of China and the World Economic Forum. And the last 11 Republicans left in the House have finally released their report concerning the weaponization of government, right? Okay. So you're right in line with where I'm at. I just think putting Josh Hawley in there is not fair to him. I'd give him more credit than that.
Yeah, I'll buy.
Next, we will go to Res Ipsa Loquitur, where he says, with the Olympics now over, he has a definition of what sport means. A sport is any athletic contest in which the result or winner is determined by the participants. Anything that's decided subjectively by a judge or judges is a competition, like gymnastics or figure skating. You buy his definitions? Important ruling here. Don't mess this up.
I'm selling.
Yeah, I'm going to sell.
Sports is clearly defined by who can set their feet the best. This is known. This is known.
Yeah, I'm going to sell. First of all, I'm going to sell on these grounds. I don't have the luxury of this debate right now. I just don't. You know, I don't. But I will agree with the old Jim Rome line from way back in the day. Is he even still around, by the way? Is he even on the air still? Is he?
I think so.
Because, I mean, he was the biggest sports media star for like a minute, like in the late 90s. But I have no idea where he is right now. But, you know, when I used to listen to him work in the mailroom at Blue Cross when I was back in the day, and I would laugh out loud listening to his show back in the day, he used to always say, anything that you can get better at while drinking and smoking is not a sport. So that was his case for why bowling wasn't a sport. Anything you can get better at while drinking and lung darting is not a sport. Okay. Fairly compelling case, actually. But yeah, I mean, I kind of view anything that involves a legitimate competition where the rules between the two sides are meant to be equal, even though not always equally applied. I kind of view that to be a sport.
Well, what you said about Jim Rowe, that is actually the very reason why in the Big Lebowski bowling is featured. They said we need a sport where you can drink and you can smoke.
There you go. The dude abides.
It's science.
There
the
you
dude
go.
abides.
It's just science, Todd.
Yes.
It is, yes.
All right, that's it for this segment. We'll have bonus buy, sell, or hold in overtime.
We will for Blaze TV subscribers today at blazetv.com/Deace. When we come back, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will join us. You don't want to miss it. Stay tuned. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, brought to you by our friends over at Focus on the Family. It can be very difficult here in an era of godlessness and upheaval in America as a result of that godlessness to stay on the narrow road if you're trying to raise a family as a parent with your children. That's why you want to check out the podcast with Jim Daly from Focus on the Family. Jim will connect you to biblically sound advice on marriage and parenting that is both relatable and practical. Also, genuinely interesting. It's not just another podcast. I mean, this is practical lifeline type of events and tips that'll help you through some of the most difficult and rewarding, if you get through them, times of your life as a parent. All right, so whether you're dealing with everyday issues, searching for guidance on more complex matters, Focus on the Family is there to support you every step of the way. So listen, learn, apply, and thrive in Christ. You can check it out now on your favorite podcast platform or visit FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com and start making a difference in your family's life today. That's Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, D-A-L-Y. FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. Again, that's FocusOnTheFamilyWithJimDaly.com. myriad.com. We are having a bit of a connection issue with Daniel on our end. We are going to fix that here momentarily, we hope. So stand by for the prophet of woe and lamentation. I think that there is, and this is one of the things I was going to get into with Daniel, so I can bring it up here. There is, I think, a simple and easy messaging opportunity here for the Trump campaign that is being missed. As we continue to see Kamala promise to do things if elected president, as if she's not in power right now. We do have Daniel? All right.
I believe so.
All right, Daniel, you there, brother?
Yep, we're right here.
All right, thank you.
Ready to go.
You got to love technology. Literally, as we were calling on you, Skype told us we had to update right now and would not let us schedule it for later, live on the air. Literally happened. Okay, so thank you for being patient, my friend. But you and I were discussing a clip from CNN last night where their token Republican contributor has to keep reminding their panel every night over and over again that Democrats have been in power the last 4 years. They've been in power 12 of the last 16 years in the White House. And so why does Trump have to own all of these policies? I mean, he was president. He has a record. He has to own some of it. Okay. But the idea that he has to own all of your share of everything that's been done over the last 16 years when he was only a president for what's that, a quarter of the time that you all were in charge is ridiculous. And yet that is much of their messaging. And, Kamala saying things like, when I get elected, I'm going to deal with the high cost of living from day one. I don't know why the Trump campaign just not running ads everywhere in America saying, well, why haven't you done it already then? Why aren't you doing it right now? And just regardless of the issue, just hammering that home. It's a very simple message most Americans would grasp, right? But they're not. So your thoughts on this, because I thought that you had an interesting juxtaposition when you and I talked about it this morning between, why we think the Trump campaign should take this approach, but then also Barack Obama standing up there like last night, like he was never president either, okay, and blaming everything on Donald Trump, right? So the floor is yours.
The question, Steve, that we need to ask is why would this land? Which, if you believe even the mildest of polls, clearly it's landing. How Kamala could just get up there and be like, yeah, the border, we need to secure it, and groceries are too expensive, like she has nothing to do with it. And, we could say the media is gaslighting all we want. Again, we cannot affect that. They will say what they say. They'll do what they do. But it has a lot to do with the fundamentals of what I've been driving home and warning about for several years already. And it's not just, several weeks of auspicious polling for one particular Democrat, but it's the fact that in 2022, a midterm is the epitome of, hey, when one party owns the White House, there's backlash against them no matter what, certainly with a bad economy, certainly with the melees, certainly with a guy like Biden in charge. And yet somehow Democrats never have to own it. Steve, let's go even further. I mean, you look at every damn polling data. You said this from people you used to speak to on the 2020 Trump campaign. They're like, damn, we're winning on every issue. It shows we're winning, but we just can't get ahead of Biden on the ballot. And that persisted in 2022. It persisted in all the off-year elections and special elections. Why? Why aren't they owning it? And I know some people are going to throw Rotten Tomatoes at me and not want to hear it. And I want to be clear. I'm not trying to relitigate the primary to relitigate the primary. I'm saying, look, you want to, during a primary, deny certain vulnerabilities about Trump because you want your guy to win. I get it. But when it comes time for the general that we all agree you got to win, and we want to win, you have to recognize that vulnerability so you could therefore try to account for it. And Obama, so every speech, and now don't think I'm gay enough to watch the convention. I just, through osmosis, watch the transcripts, on Twitter. I don't watch it, and I didn't watch it. But everything else was demonic, sort of like the type of speech you're going to give in front of a Hamas rally. Okay, it wasn't the type of thing that you're going to target swing voters, because frankly, that's not what a convention's about. It's your micro targeting and your ground game, digital and ads that's going to do that. But Obama is smart. Okay, I mean, say what you want about him, but he kind of gets it where the politics is, and he said, quote, and again, I know people get upset. There's this childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, the weird obsession with crowd sizes. We do not need 4 years of bluster, bumbling, and chaos. We've seen this movie before. And, what he's honing in on, and he understands the contours of this election, he understands that you have to make Trump the de facto incumbent, that he's been around. All you hear about is Trump, because the media has this symbiotic relationship with him, for better, for worse, positive, negative. They're always going to cover him. And Kamala, let's face it, she owns everything, but she was always in the background. She hasn't been out up front much the last couple of years. So if you are the Democrats, you're going to want a message like Obama. You're not going to defend radical policies. What you're going to do is just the crowd size stuff. And we all have to recognize that's stupid. And even if you don't think it is, you certainly have to concede, based on what we've seen the last few elections, that the swing voters we need to win do think it's stupid and are jaded by it, and they're exhausted by it. So your job needs to be to elevate and accentuate inflation and border prosperity and safety and security, and that Kamala, precisely because Biden is a dead man, she is the de facto president. And you do that by having a budget fight. Is Kamala, as de facto president, gonna veto a bill that funds all of government minus releasing criminal aliens, gangbangers, drug traffickers, people on the terror watch list, things like that? You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's how you make her the incumbent. But if you don't do that, we might think it's absurd. Like, give me a break. You're going to skate away from not owning this. That is what has been happening. Think about it. Steve, this should be the Republican 2008. Meaning, 2008, you had melees, the Iraq war going bad, terrible economy, financial collapse. Republicans didn't even run their VP. They ran a totally new guy that, frankly, was kind of at odds with Bush, was his original nemesis. And still, it was clear from the get-go in that election, Obama was winning that election. Mm-hmm. There was never a serious time where there was any thought that Republicans as a party, because of the incumbency, that they owned the status quo, that they were able to win that election. Why isn't this the case in reverse? And that's what we need to be asking. And then we need to find every way to make Harris the incumbent.
And I watched J.D. Vance, 39 years old. He's had one campaign as a senator that he just won, okay? This is really his first time under a national microscope. And yet the level of messaging discipline from him that he has exhibited here, I mean, if we're fortunate enough to last as a country, I have no idea. I can't even imagine how good at this he'll be at 49. You know what I'm saying? With more experience, okay? What he's just doing instinctively, the level of messaging focus here is extraordinary. And whenever I talk about messaging, I think people think I mean we just reiterate the same talking points over and over again. That actually bores people. That's not what I mean. It means your ability to bring every issue, no matter what it is. For example, my message is that I want to make a biblical worldview in America great again. That's my message. So everything we talk about, polls, elections, social issues, everything we talk about, we bring that back to that's the source of, that's the Nile as it was to the Egyptians. Okay. That's the temple as it was to the Jews. We're bringing everything back to that. That is the core of the message here. And everything JD talks about, he is able to bring it back to what he thinks the message of the campaign is, which is this is not a legitimate presidential candidacy. It was crafted to get rid of Joe Biden by the same exact people that will be running the show if she wins, that are unaccountable and have wrecked the country, right? And that is his core message, and I love that message. I'm not saying that's the only winning message, but he's found one. And he brings everything he talks about, whether it's Tim Walz lying about whether his kids got IVF to be conceived, no matter what it is, always brings it back to that message, okay? Why can we not get the campaign to do this? I understand the candidate is mercurial, and that's one of his strengths, but that shouldn't change the ads the campaign is running. Why isn't the campaign just running a series of ads that says, every time Kamala promises to fix something, do something? Why hasn't she done anything about it the last 4 years? Why doesn't she do something about it right now? And every ad just ends with those two questions. You don't need Trump to execute talking points at a rally in Howell, Michigan. You're the campaign. Do your job. Where are those ads? Why aren't they doing this? I'm mystified by this.
Well, I mean, there's a general question about the degree of money being spent on air, digital, or on the ground. in targeted areas relative to what was done in 2016 very successfully by the Trump campaign. And I still don't really have an answer for that. For a while, maybe money was an issue, but, the last 2 months, it should really not be much of an issue, even if you can't match the Democrats dollar for dollar. So I don't know. I don't know where the money is being spent. You're talking about the quality of the messaging. I mean, Steve, look, again, I mean, you know me, I don't want Hamas. I mean, I don't want Hamas. I think we all understand what comes in the wake of this. One of the most prescient things you said is when you endorsed DeSantis that day, you talked about Trump being a spent force.
Let me define that, meaning he's so well known, there's no ceiling left. Okay, there's only a floor. Okay, and there's and he's probably not capable of redefining himself. Then he got shot in the face. Okay. And instead of cowering, stood up bleeding, and without having anybody knowing how bad off he was, and screamed and clenched his fist, fight. And I thought, now you can redefine yourself, especially because your convention's the very next week.
Move away from the crowd size and that sort of stuff.
Get on issues, yes.
And again, this is not a see I told you so. This is prospectively, my point is that you have to recognize that sooner rather than later, that is a serious problem. For example, in terms of redefining, there's a lot of people like, well, he was behind even more in 2016. That's a nonsensical talking point. I mean, there's nothing about even the worst polls that's insurmountable. It's a matter of there's not much to redefine with him that you could. It's not as volatile as it was 8 years ago. And number two, it's coming off of an uninterrupted pattern of Republican losses in those 6 critical states in every single race that matters. If Trump winds up losing, Democrats will hold 6 of the 7 governorships, except for Brian Kemp. Whereas when Romney lost in 2012, headed into 2013, Republicans held all 7. So, I mean, it's a very bad situation, in these states. My point is you got to make a big play in the fourth quarter. And that's why my point is I don't know, Steve, if there is something with an ad or a Trump discipline versus what I'm advocating for is a funding fight over your strongest issue. Kamala, you just said you're going to secure the border. You are VP, de facto president with Biden asleep right now. Will you sign our budget bill, making it that you cannot release at the border any criminal rapists, all that? I mean, the amount of stories we have. I have a column coming out with like 10 of them just for the last 7 days. I mean, the amount you could do that.
Now, let me say this because we're short on time. I have very good little birdies telling me that Trump is actually behind the scenes advocating for what you're saying. And that it is House GOP leadership that is like, we never win shutdowns, we'll lose the election. So I am told...
We'll miss our fundraisers.
Yes. I am told by very, very good sources that Trump is actually lobbying GOP House leadership to do... and on the very issue that you want them to do it on, that he is actually lobbying for this is what I am told.
It's your best issue. It's precisely before early voting begins that you want to elevate it. You complain about the media focusing on what you don't want to focus on. You want to focus on this. You have a shutdown fight. But it's not just that the issue is auspicious, Steve. It's the thesis you just laid out. It's connecting that Harris is in charge right now. What are you going to do, Kamala? Or we could talk about crowd size.
Good stuff as always, my friend. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You bet. All right, gentlemen, your thoughts here. You get the final word. We got about 2 minutes left.
So from beginning to end, I mean, you started off talking about the absurdity of 12 out of the last 16 years being under Democrat presidents, and somehow Trump's being made to own this, and that's the point. He's talking about flipping that script. If you can't flip a script like that, again, you just deserve to lose.
Indeed. I mean, I described this in very, very charitable terms, I thought, malpractice. There's a lot of that going on with the broader campaign. Basically, the traditional definition of campaign right now is what J.D. Vance is doing. He's making it about things that are just verifiably true, verifiable contrasts. And that's just not coming from the broader campaign. And I don't know what
he is way outshining the broader campaign.
Indeed.
He's the biggest asset they have, and it's not even
in terms of message. Yeah, in terms of message. Now, one thing that Donald Trump is doing that I think is objectively good is he's out there. He is out there all of the time. It's just that I see very little clips, at least on social media, of actually talking about the issues. He's out there doing interviews ad nauseum, seemingly. He was just on Theo Von. Theo Von is a very popular comedian now. He was out there on Theo Von's podcast, answering questions, just going off the shop.
Theo Von? Never heard the name, but apparently this is a big deal.
Yeah, he's
just an old guy, so I don't know.
Pretty well-known comedian amongst the younger generation.
Okay, so yeah, that's my age.
That's a good thing. That's a verifiable contrast with Kamala Harris, who's not doing any of that crap whatsoever. So, but again, the message from the broader campaign needs to be about the issues, what you were just talking about. 12 out of the last 16 years, Democrats have been in charge of this administration, and they're making it seem as if Donald Trump has been in charge of the Intergalactic Space Confederation for the last 100 years. That is malpractice. That is not a narrative that can be allowed. And yes, you're up against the mainstream media. That's a narrative that cannot be allowed to take root.
This is where you have. This is the campaign's job. Okay. I mean, it doesn't matter if Donald Trump wants to talk about crowd sizes or anything at an event. You have a job. You could be, as a campaign, and we're not the show to abscond, Trump from all accountability, but this is your job. Your job is to make him better. You should be pushing that message, regardless of whatever he meanders into at a rally every day. Push that message. Do your job, man. Do your job. Romans 8:28.